Father Chris, how are you this afternoon?
How are you, Father Gary? Good to see you.
You too, you too. I'm really excited to be here with you. You know, you're one of my favorite people, and I absolutely love the fact that you took time out of your busy schedule to be with us on this podcast, Armed with Faith. It's my desire with this podcast to offer encouragement and inspiration to people that work with youth in our archdiocese and other archdioceses, to give them the weaponry, I guess, the ammunition to go out into the world and to inspire kids and to bring them to a closer understanding of Christ and his church and live a life that way. You are one of the priests that I put up there with people like Father Tom Paris and say that you could have Father Spencer Kezios, you could have done a million other things with your life. You could have been very, very, very successful in any kind of other business in your life, but you chose to be a priest. Let's start there. How did little Chris Kerhulas decide that he wanted to be a priest? If it's a long story, we'll have to do a two-part series with this. But how does somebody like you decide, you know, I'm going to go to the seminary, I'm going to be a priest, and I'm going to serve God and his people?
Well, it's really interesting because it happened fairly quickly. It was basically because of a mentor that I had in the church. He died as Bishop Kallistos Samaras, but he was then Father Kallistos Samaras, who was at Assumption Church in Chicago for about 7 years. My parents used to have a restaurant across the street. And on about the beginning of my sophomore year in high school, I gave up the altar and because I had been involved all the way through my life in the altar boys and in Goya and in Boy Scouts at the church. And I gave that up, and I didn't want any part of it being in high school. And then this priest came, and I started to get to know him. And he told me, you're coming back. And I said, not really. And he said, oh, yes, you are. And at the beginning of my junior year in high school, not only did I come back, but a couple of my friends were talking about going to the seminary. And I said, why would you do that? And they said, well, to become priests because we want to live this life. And we started talking and talking and talking. And one thing led to another. And I started talking to Father Samaras about it. And not only did I come back to the organizations of the church, but decided that I thought the priesthood might be possible for me, at least to go to the seminary to see if it was possible for me. And he used a very interesting approach with me. He told me that I'd never make it,
Oh, really?
that I'm just not cut out for it. And I said, you're probably right. And as the years went on, that became more of a challenge. And when I was a junior in the college division of the seminary, he told me, he said, remember all those times I've told you you'll never make it? I think I was wrong. I think not only will you make it, but I think you'll make it in a big way. I think you'll be a great priest. So ever from the senior year of my college involvement, I knew that my life was heading in the right direction.
So sophomore in high school, you're the typical teenage kid. Doesn't matter what generation we are at that age in our lives, we're always kind of working our way away from the church, right? We're kind of spreading our wings a little bit and leaving. New priest comes in, wrangles you in, gets you back involved. You are encouraged to go look at the seminary with other friends, and you're there. At what point at Hellenic College, because you did your college work and then you did your graduate work at Holy Cross, right? Correct. At what point did you know that you were on the right path to be a priest? Like what?
Well, I think about the senior year in the college division. I knew that I could tell you intellectually a million different reasons why I should pick up and leave and give this up here. But in here, it was this is my life, and by the time I finished the senior year, I knew it was it. I was going to finish this course and go on with this life.
So, Father Chris, I don't want to make this about me, but usually I always do because I'm narcissistic that way. but I feel exactly the same way, right? Like I feel exactly, I can give you a million reasons up here why I should stop what I'm doing, but in here, I know that it's not me, it's something else. And you are the one almost 30 years ago, sitting in a Korean barbecue, Mongolian Korean barbecue place in Westwood, California, who told me exactly that. Your head's going to tell you a million things to leave, but your heart's never going to let you down. And that was the turning point for me in actually going to the seminary. And I credit you for that. And I thank you for that. But I want to know, like, I'm noticing now, I've been a priest for 20 years, believe it or not. And it seemed like those days that I was crying on your shoulder and wanting to know what I should do. Like, I wish that the Banagia would just walk into the room and say, go do this, right? But 20 years have gone by since those days. And I really feel called to it. But I'm seeing more and more kids walk away from the church. And that tactic that was used by Father Samaras to bring you back in doesn't necessarily work, because the kids have more excuses these days. Club soccer, acting classes, production, whatever they're doing, right? What kind of encouragement can you give to clergy now to reach out to these kids, to really kind of bring kids back into the fold?
Well, with Father Callistos, it wasn't so much the things he said, but it was what he did. He would be with us as we had a very extensive altar boy group at Assumption, Chicago. There was over 100 of us. Every Friday we'd meet, he'd be there. He'd play basketball in the spring, summer, fall, when we could be outside. He didn't like that we used to throw snowballs at the school, at the public buses that used to go by, and the bus drivers would chase us into the church. But he was with us all the time. He was present in our lives. We made this priest that our parents put on a pedestal down on our level, and made him real in our lives. And the only message I would have for clergy is you've got to be there in the lives of these young people, especially when their parents get them to the church. We encourage parents all the time, just get them there and let us try to make a reality of the church in their lives. Let us make it a support system, because if they're not there, there's very little chance of us getting them there.
Right.
And that was a major issue back then. He was always there with us. And believe me, it made a huge difference in the lives of a lot of young kids. I'm sure.
Now, when you graduated, were you married upon graduation? Did you get married shortly after graduation? How did that all play out then?
Yeah, I took a lay assistant position in the church at Assumption Cathedral in Denver.
Okay.
I met Father Neophotistos at the Clergy Lady Conference that summer in '74 in Chicago. And he had told me that he has a job opening for, youth director and a Greek school director and all those things in the parish that he needed help with, and that he'd love it. I was supposed to go to Greece, but that didn't work out because my mother was very ill at the time. And in fact, died shortly after I went to Denver.
Sorry to hear that. May her memory be eternal.
Thank you. And so I went to Denver as the youth director, and in the spring of '74, and met my wife there. She was one of the directresses of the Sunday school program, and all the people in the office wrote down the girls that they thought I should date in the community. I just, thanks a lot. I just moved here from Chicago, and I don't even know the city. I don't even know where to go get gas. You're telling me about girls to date. So I opened the envelopes that they gave me, and all the envelopes, 5 of them, had the same name on it.
That is great. Oh my gosh, what a great story.
That's the last one I'm going to date, because you all thought it was the perfect match. It turned out.
That is great. How awesome. So you said that was the last girl you would date because they all put it on the envelope. That's fantastic. Love that.
One day I asked her if she'd go to a hockey game, and she said yes. And that was our first date.
So Blackhawks, obviously?
Excuse me?
Was it the Blackhawks?
No, it was the Blackhawks minor league team.
Okay.
They
Okay.
didn't have back then, now we're talking 74, they didn't have a profession, they didn't have an NHL franchise.
Oh, okay. I don't know much about, you know, hockey. I always, whenever I get taken to a hockey game, I say, hey, what are we going to do for halftime? And
It was
people
really,
laugh at me.
speaking about hockey, it was a really interesting story that my wife was a student at the University of Denver, who won the national championship 2 nights ago, by the way.
Okay.
And they were expanding the hockey program at that time, and I was going to do an interview and try out for the hockey program at the University of Denver before I decided to go to the seminary.
Oh, wow.
That was
Wow.
7 years before.
That's great. That's great. It's
Right.
funny how things come in circles like that, right?
Right. She
Yeah.
was a student there when I was gonna try out for the team and scholarships at the University of Denver, and I went east instead of west.
That's
Went
great.
west eventually.
Eventually West, right?
Yeah,
So
God-
listen, when young men leave the seminary and they want to get ordained, finding somebody that's going to share that lifestyle with them can be a little bit difficult, right? I was that burden was taken away from me because my girlfriend at the time was very encouraging of me going to the seminary, made it very easy for us to like answer the calling together. How was it for your presbyterat in those early days of dating, knowing what you wanted to do in your life as a priest, to take that step herself?
Well, her family was very church oriented, very involved in the cathedral in Denver, and there was no doubt that this was a God-fearing family that was incredibly steeped in the traditions of the church. It's really interesting though, because when I was ordained a deacon at the old Assumption Church in Denver before the cathedral was built, she told me upon greeting me after the ordination was over, she said, "You know, I never believed that you would become a priest.
Really? Really?
Yes, you've made me a believer now." I said, "Why?" She said, "Because your interests are in so many different directions, you know, theater and hockey and sports and this and that. And I never thought you would do it. My heart was telling me, I don't, you know, whichever direction we go in life is fine, but I don't think it's going to happen." And it did.
Well, Father Chris, I think that's what attracts a lot of young people to you, because you don't we take out that, and I hope this doesn't sound like it's not a criticism, it's a compliment, but you take away that mysticism of the priesthood and you relate, like you said that Father Samaras did for you, right? You make it more of a relationship, and that's one of the major things that I have learned from you in watching you in your ministry and learning from you. And I loved that you're a huge Blackhawks fan. I think that people that know me would know that I'm a huge Dodgers fan, right? So I think I don't know if I'm as big a Dodger fan as you're a Blackhawks fan, but I love my Dodgers, right? And I think that it makes it a little bit more human. And I think that every priest, no matter who they are or where they are, has an element of being human within them. And I think that when we let that out, we attract people to our personhood, and then developing a relationship becomes so much easier with them, right?
Well, absolutely. If you don't show your human side, they'll never trust you.
Right.
They'll never understand who you really are. And
so after getting ordained then in Denver, how long did you stay in Denver for a while before going to Chicago?
Just for that year.
Okay.
Just for that year, and I got ordained the next summer, and ended up at St. Nicholas in Chicago in the fall of 1975.
Okay, and then Chicago for the rest of your
Yes.
vocation as a priest. Excellent.
Correct.
And then you've recently retired, though, right?
Yes, I retired because of diabetes complications. I went on disability in 2010, and then retired in 16 because the disability goes directly into retirement when you turn 66.
So let me ask you then, what do you miss about being a parish priest, I guess? Is that fair? Because you did other things as well as serving a parish. You were youth director of things. You were served at Ionian Village in the summer times. You did the summer camp programs, all kinds of different things. What is there anything that you miss about being in a parish?
Well, I think it's the relationships, like you said before. I miss really understanding and trying to really be a shoulder for young people. I think that's the thing I miss the most. I miss having my own altar, even though I'm helping a young priest that I sent to the seminary, Father Chris Michalopoulos.
Awesome.
And he says, you know, you used to direct me, now I'm directing you,
That's
so you're
awesome.
going to do what I want. And I said, oh, really?
Right. Let me ask
And
you, speaking of which, I don't mean to, I do this often, is change the question on you, but can you count, or have you ever counted how many young men you've encouraged to go to the seminary?
I think it's about 15.
Good for you. Good for you.
I
Good for you.
think.
That's awesome, because I think that every
Couple of them aren't priests anymore. They blame me for that too. No.
it's okay. It's okay. It's not your fault they're not priests anymore. But here's, I hope it's not your fault. But the thing I was going to say is that I think that every clergyman is responsible to encourage one other person to become a priest, so that we perpetuate the church and keep it growing. What is it about being with the youth that you appreciated, that you just liked? What was it about working with kids that and being there? Because even now in your retirement, that's one of the things that you mentioned, was having an opportunity to give a shoulder to a young person, was the term you used.
I think it's because of my own experiences, especially as a teenager, because teenagers were my focus. They were, I worked with all ages, but I think my favorite were teenagers. And because of how difficult it was for me when I was a teenager, and the issues that I had inside, and very, very few areas or places to go to understand those issues. So I really felt it necessary, and I said this in my ordination too, in my Si Martiria, that the priest gives every time he's ordained. He speaks to the bishop. If I could make one person's life worth living because of the church, then I will have been successful in my ministry, because I knew that I was one person, and all the difficulties that I had were difficult to understand. So I made it an issue, and I made it a priority to help young people have somewhere to turn. That's it. That's really the focus.
So everybody's going to want to know the formula, right? Like the magic pill to do that. How do you do that? How can you tell somebody who is trying to do that? What does it take?
Like I said before, you got to be there. You got to invest the time. If you don't invest the time, you are cut out from day one, from minute one, because young people have so many things on their plates in this day and age. Of course, right now we have other issues too, and we're beginning to see the results of the COVID-19 realities, whether you agreed with them or not, by shutting people in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Teenage suicides are off the charts right now, off the charts. And they're going to affect everybody, and every family, and every organization, every church. And priests better be ready. Now, if they're not interested, then they can easily shut themselves off and just turn young people to professionals, so they won't have to deal with it. But if you're going to be there in the life of the young people in your parish, get ready. You're going to have to work. And it is a lot of work. You probably know this just as well, if not better than I do. But it is a lot of work once you make that commitment. If you make that commitment to yourself that you're going to be in the life of the young people, get ready. Because as soon as you break down those barriers, as soon as they trust you, you're going to work, because they're going to be honest. They're going to be totally upfront with you, because they're not afraid of you anymore. And so you have a position.
I love that. So let me ask you then, in your years as a priest, can you think of one time where you felt totally successful in connecting with a kid? And then can you tell me of another time where you felt totally like you may have failed, like it felt like failure?
There are numerous failures. I mean, I remember going to a jail one time, and he wasn't even Greek Orthodox. He was a friend of mine. They used to sit near me in the hockey games because I had season tickets. And he told me about his brother who was 16, who was in jail for shooting somebody.
Oh
He
no.
didn't kill him, but he shot somebody. And I went to the prison and I talked to him and I said, look, what's the story with you, man? Why would you do such a thing? What pushed you there? And he said, it's the gang. He said, I'm part of them, and we were supposed to hate these other people. And I said, yeah, all right, have you learned your lesson? I was a little naive. I was still a young priest, and he says, what do you mean learn my lesson? I said, well, you're going to get out pretty soon, okay? Because luckily that person didn't die. What are you going to do? Are you going to change? Are you going to go back to the gang? Absolutely, he said. Absolutely.
Wow.
And I said, what? After all of this, you're going to go back? He said, where else am I supposed to turn? He started crying. He was a 16, 17-year-old. He wasn't a 40-year-old. Started crying and hugging me because he had nowhere else to turn.
Wow.
The gang had the open arms. So that's what I tell priests, open arms, because there are others that are waiting for them.
No, they are. They are. Wow.
That was the
Wow.
failure, because
Okay.
after that, he was part of the gang again. He did go back to jail, in and out, and then I lost track of his brother, so I lost track of him. I felt that I didn't do my job then.
But you tried, right? Like you gave it an
Sure.
effort. So of course.
Successes, oh man, I wrote a book on parenting, as you know, called Parent
Great
Point.
book. That's you know what, we should do another show just on that book because
Sure.
yeah.
But a lot of the stories in that book are from Ionian Village. Oh, I wonder why that's important. And I remember two young men from Baltimore who are very successful now in their careers. I think one is an attorney and the other is CEO of some corporation. And in an Orthodox life session, the one young man was talking about the fact that he didn't even want to come to Ionian Village, and he was forced to come, and blah blah blah, and he didn't really want to talk about anything, and I was forcing him to talk about himself. And he says, I really don't want to, because nobody at home cares, so why should you care? Why should anybody here care in the group? And I said, oh, come on now, and he started crying. And I said, come on, what's really going on with you? And he said, I have an older brother. He's the dream child of my parents. I could never live up to him. He's a football player. He's a year older than me. He does this, he does that. All the girls are love him, and and I'll never be able to be like him, period. And I noticed on the left, the other side of the group, there were some guys laughing. Some guys and a girl laughing about what he was saying. He was crying. I said, what's so funny? And a couple of them pointed like this. I didn't realize it because it was early in the session, but his brother was sitting on the other side of the group.
Oh, wow.
And I said, what's that? And he says, I'm his brother.
Wow.
I said, how do you really feel about him? Now, I get the chills every time I tell the story, because it didn't come from me. It comes from above. This wasn't me. Okay. I said, do you care about him? And he says, of course. I said, tell him. And there was a silence over the group. Tell him what you really feel. And he said, Tom, I love you. The older brother told the younger. From that point on in the camp session, the 2 more weeks that was left or whatever in Ionian Village, they were inseparable. They were together constantly. 2 years later, I went for a program at their church in Baltimore, and they come up and they said, do you remember us, blah, blah, blah. I said, not really. He said, and then they told me, and I said, you guys, man, look at you, grown up, maybe it was even more than 2 years. Maybe it was 4 years, 5 years later.
You give me the goosebumps because I love camping ministries. I grew up at St. Sophia Camp, been part of a whole bunch of different programs throughout the years, and now I've been blessed with the opportunity to serve at Ionian Village, and those things really come up at those places because we're able to really kind of disconnect. It's like going to the mountaintop, right? And you encounter Elijah, you encounter Moses, you encounter Christ, right? And then there's transformation up there. What is it about these camping ministries that you enjoyed, that you liked being part of? You said that a lot of the stories in your book are about Ionian Village, and it really is a special place and lots of miracles that happen there. But what is it about these programs that you would encourage parents to consider sending their kids to be part of?
It was the greatest program I've ever been involved in the 47 years I've been a priest. I went there four summers in a row and saw things that I never thought I'd see. The interesting thing is when you leave camp and you're at the airport and everybody's saying goodbye to each other, and back then it was very emotional, you realize that you only knew Gary from California. You didn't know Gary's last name was Kiriakou. You had no concept of that.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to take the sheet that we used to pass out of everybody's addresses and phone numbers of who was who, so you wouldn't forget them. Right. Because you didn't care if their parents were presidents of corporations or CEOs. You didn't care if they were they were from poor families or rich families, or
mm-hmm.
or from the West Coast or from the East Coast. You cared because you heard Chris from Chicago talk about his life in those sessions, and that's who you cared about. They were the facades and the walls were broken down very early in those camp sessions that Father Costa back then had designed, and they were incredibly successful in making young people just tear down walls.
Yeah,
there's nothing better than that.
I was just going to say that, and especially nowadays, right, where they're able to hide behind so many things and social media, and then they put up a facade of what their life really is. But like you said, teenage suicide, suicides in general, but teenage suicide is through the roof, right? Tell me about something that happened in your vocation as a priest that rocked your world, where you thought, I don't know if I can continue doing this. Like, you remember we said there were a million reasons here, but one reason here. Give me one of the reasons that got very close to here, to sending it away. Was there anything that rocked your world in your priesthood?
Oh yeah, the devil doesn't make mistakes. He works overtime. Whenever there is good, that's what I used to tell parish councils. Whenever the church program is successful, whenever there is growth, whenever there is response of the people to the ministries that you try to participate in your parish, the devil will work overtime. And there were numerous times that the politics got so awful, on without getting into specifics, so I don't get suspended from the priesthood. They were so intense that I would go home and say, I don't know how many more years. And the reality is, I got sick over it.
Yeah.
The diabetes took over because we have a tendency to eat our frustrations in the clergy. Sure. Many clergymen are overweight, and because they don't have any other releases to be able to release some of that tension and that intensity. And I was over 300 pounds. And it wasn't until I went on disability that I could lose the weight, because I wanted to live for my grandkids.
Good for you. How many grandkids do you have now? Two. How old are they? 11
and 14.
So my father-in-law says that if he knew grandkids were this much fun, he would have had them first.
That's very wise.
If I can figure that out, that'd be great. Father, what advice?
The politics at times rocked my world.
Okay, that's fair. I totally get that, and I've experienced that myself as well. And it's rough. What advice would you give a young priest these days as they enter a parish on their own and they're starting to establish themselves? What kind of advice would you give them?
I've told numerous priests that walk into very difficult parishes in this area in Chicago that all you have to do is love them. That's all. You're gonna, no matter how tough you are, no matter how easy you are, no matter how weak you are or how strong you are, no matter what your interests are, the devil will work on you. He'll work overtime to get at you. But if you love people, there's nothing that can separate you from that calling, and nothing that would separate you from being successful, because it's only feeding one person. Mother Teresa says, if she didn't feed the one person, she wouldn't have fed 50,000 in Calcutta.
Right.
It's just feeding that one person. Just worry about the one person, the person that God puts in front of you, because he's not going to make mistakes. He's going to put them in front of you.
I love that, Father Chris. I love that. Thank you. I'm getting emotional now because I'm just bringing up a whole lot of memories for me, and like thinking about the difficulties that we have as clergy, but the benefits as well, and the blessings that we see also. When Father Tom Paris was leaving this life, I wanted to drive up from Camarillo, Southern California, to Oakland to visit him, and my older son wanted to go as well, because I would talk about Father Tom all the time, and Harrison didn't remember Father Tom because he was 3 or 4 when we left Oakland to come down here. So he had this figure of Father Tom in his head of a very big man, right? But when we went to see him, Father Tom was in his bed, and he had lost a whole lot of weight and was a lot skinnier than we remembered, right? And my son asked him this question. I'm going to ask you the same one. Would you do it all over again? And Father Tom looked at him and said, what? And he says, would you be a priest all over again? And I was like, wow. I started thinking about how I would answer that question. And then I just thought about Father Tom answering that question. So I ask you as well, would you do it all over again?
Oh, absolutely. My 10th anniversary was at the Ionian Village. And we used to walk, I don't know if you still do, to a monastery that was about a half a mile away from the camp. And I liturgized on Kimisios in 1985. And it was on the day of the Kimisis. And because Father Soteris knew it was my anniversary, he says, liturgize alone. And I said, if I had the choice what I would change or how I would do the last 10 years over, I would do them exactly as they were. I don't think, Father Gary, there there's a lot of things I would want to do bigger or better or different, but I wouldn't want to change the framework and the history of what happened to me in the last 47.
I love
want to do the same thing.
Your response absolutely was the exact same response that Father Tom Paris gave as well, right? And I love that, and it's such a blessing. Father, how do we encourage young men to go to seminary and become clergy? I'm finding that less and less are doing that, and having a conversation with somebody at a parish that I was serving at yesterday, I just said to him, getting them to church is hard enough, and you want us to get them to the seminary, right? How do we do this? What kind of advice do you have for that?
Well, it's a matter of when people see you working, they ask you questions about, well, why did you say this, or why did you do this, or why? And I said, because I care. And caring and loving, as I said before, is the most important aspect of our ministries, especially to young people, because they will respond. And once you get them to respond, they're gonna use you. They're gonna lean on you. They're gonna depend on you. And that there's nothing better. And when you tell them that, that's why I became a priest, because I don't think there's anything better. They start thinking about what they're going to do in their lives. And when you ask them, well, what direction do you think you want your life to take? You never know what you're going to hear. And if you hear 1 out of 50 of those questions, well, maybe I want to help people too. Well, how? Did God put you here for a reason? Because I teach even to adults, even to old people, God doesn't make mistakes. And he will put in front of you those young people he wants.
What are some of the most difficult topics that kids brought up with you that you had a hard time discussing and dealing with?
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of things. There's all kinds of things. Parental topics are usually the most difficult because they're living under their parents' wing, and sometimes they feel that they are being misused or abused, and it's not abuse at all. It's parental
Right.
guidance and direction. And you kind of have to teach them, hey, look, when you came home from the hospital, if they didn't feed you, they didn't clean you, they didn't coddle you, you die.
Right.
You die without food. You know, there's nothing in between.
Right.
So now you're telling your parents after 16 years of this or 15 years of this or 17 years of this, that to let go and leave me alone because I'm my own person now. Whoa, wait a minute. The parents have to learn how to release, how to let go, how to back off. And that's difficult. So getting them to understand that is sometimes really very tough. It's very tough. Those are some of the most crucial issues because other issues, social issues and personal issues, all evolve a lot of times from that pressure and from that difficulty and those shortcomings that young people think they have because of parental pressure. So yeah, there are other, there are specific issues. You name any issue, from school to sexuality to colleges and what am I going to do with life? They all become major issues for them. So you have to be ready. You have to be ready to respond and help, direct them to understanding themselves and to understanding that it's really not all that bad. The world is a beautiful place when you make it that. You've got to make it that, though.
Right. Yeah, depression, anxiety, huge issues right now. And I love the way that you said that it kind of all evolves from around the home. That's interesting because you do all those issues. You said sexuality, you said college, you said those all kind of come from the home life, right? Like, and how that works out, and you do that. Father, is there anything that you want to share? I've been asking you a whole bunch of questions, but I don't want this interview to end and have you say, I wish I would have said X, Y, Z. But what is it about? What is it about the priesthood? What is it about serving that you want to share?
Well, as I said before, God doesn't make mistakes. I mean, He puts you in situations that He knows what you can do. And there are people that God puts in front of you, even if it's a beggar on the street, that you can make a difference. And it's what's in your heart that makes you respond one way or the other. People need us now more than ever. And one of the issues with COVID, was shutting down everything. Well, wait a minute. The church is a hospital. It's not a courtroom, It's the St. John Chrysostom said that, in fact. It's not, I didn't come up with that. And he's right. He was right. We need the church in this day and age because healing is a major issue in the church. And what we've made it is just a place for those who already have made that decision. Well, what about the ones who haven't made the decision? What can you do as a clergyman to change their mind that they should be coming? I tell people, told somebody from the Ukraine a couple of days ago, come to church to be at peace with yourself for 1 hour. For 1 hour. Just come to be at peace, because God works miraculously in so many ways once you get them to take that step. Because once you take the step, you're telling the devil, I don't care how many difficulties I have right now, you're behind me, so stay behind me.
I'm really emotional because you're inspirational. You inspire a lot of things, and you really kind of cut to the core on all of these things. What makes you passionate? What makes you so passionate about this? God, my interview skills go out the door. But my question that I want to ask you is like, to simplify it, is like, why do you feel this way? Like, why do you feel like that about God? Like, how are you so passionate about it?
Well, I don't believe that I have many talents, and God has said, you know, even if your talents are this big, you're gonna put them to work, and that's what my ministry showed me. That's what it directed me to. God directed me there, and the issues that I have dealt with and the people that I have dealt with have showed me that you know, God has directed me in the right place. You know,
Love it.
I'm sure that once I leave this earth and have to face him face to face, I'm going to ask him not to ask me certain questions, or mention certain people, but do the other, because I don't look at myself as that talented, and but God has taken whatever I had and put them to work, and I'm so thankful for that.
That humility is huge, but the lives that you've touched and the talents that you have, you've utilized really, really well, Father, and you've put them to great use. There's a kid, let's say there's a kid right now who is flipping through and finds this on, you know, the website or YouTube or whatever, and they're going to listen to a message about hope. What are you telling them about life? What are you telling them about not giving up? What's the message that you're giving today?
No, I'm going to tell them that God will be there for you. You're never going to be alone, no matter how much you want to be alone. You're not going to be, and that message, especially to teenagers, is crucial. That they are not living in some box that nobody else can touch them. That they are living in a world that God will give them the opportunity to respond to people and take the talents that they have and put them to work for other people. And once they do that, I tell priestess all the time, get out of yourself. Forget about you. Once you reach the other person, once you stretch out your hand, you will understand, and they will understand so much more about life. And I would tell every young person, man, you have to give of yourself to learn about yourself. It's an important issue.
Love that. So let's wrap this up with a few like personal things. What's one movie that every kid should see? Like, what's one movie that not your favorite movie, but what's one movie that it could be your favorite movie, but what's one movie that you think that every kid should see?
Right now, or in general?
Of all time.
Oh, I've done retreats on the Breakfast Club. I used to call it the Breakfast Club retreats, and have seen some amazing things happen in those things. But there's a new one, maybe even better, and it's modern. It wasn't a very successful movie. The Broadway show was one of the best I've ever seen. I've seen it 3 times. It's called Dear Evan Hansen. It's about depression. It's about acceptance. In fact, one of the chapters in my book deals with one of the turning point in this film, where Evan Hansen just says, you know, just reach out and you will be found. Nobody is lost, and all you need to do is reach out. If you feel lost, just reach for somebody, and you will be found. And
Father, mention the name of your book. Mention the name of your book as well, so that we can put it on the notes at the bottom of the podcast.
It's called Parent Points, and what it is 13 different subjects that I felt important in my ministry with young people, and how parents have reacted to it. Because a lot of times the issues are because of the way parents have reacted, positive, negative, whatever. And at the end of each chapter, I give parents 5 to 10 different points of how if they encounter this issue, that maybe they should think about A, B, C, D, E, F, G, C.
If my kids are 21 and 22 and I have a 13-year-old daughter, is it too late to read or learn anything from those?
Oh God, no. Oh God, no.
for any parents of children any age.
And,
Okay,
and
great.
even teenagers or young adults, if they they're looking to the future of parenting, to read some of the stories, like those two young men from Baltimore at the Ionian Village. The stories like that are in there.
Very cool. So Evan Hansen, Breakfast Club for movies. What about books outside of your book, Parent Points? What books do you think that every kid should have to read?
Well, I love the books written by Mitch Albom.
Okay.
He's a sports writer in Detroit, and he has written about 10 books. And one is The 5 People You Meet When You Go to Heaven. It's how you touch people and don't even know it. And what he does is the person who dies and goes to heaven meets all these people that were touched by indirectly by him through 5 or 6 different people that he affected that eventually affected this person. And another book is Tuesdays with Maury. Yeah, I had one of the greatest compliments I ever got was one young man said, because Maury is the teacher and is dying, and Mitch, it's a true story. Mitch used to fly to Boston every Tuesday to meet with Maury until Maury died. He was dying of ALS. And until he died, he would go because of the impact that this teacher had on his life, this mentor, this teacher. And a young person, when I gave him the book and he read it, he came to me, he was 17. He came to me and he said, let me tell you, if this was you and me, it wouldn't just be Tuesdays.
That's awesome. What a great compliment. What a really great compliment. How about scripture verses? Scripture verses that every kid should really kind of meditate on.
Well, the major one is in Matthew, in St. Matthew, when you do, Christ said, when you do this for the least of my brothers, when you feed somebody, when you give somebody something to drink, when you visit somebody, when you clothe somebody, you think you're doing it for the least of my brothers. No, you're doing it for me. That's what I tell people. I said, the beggar that presents himself or herself on the street is presented to you by God, because it has nothing to do, the dime or the dollar or the $10 you give to that person has nothing to do with that person. Everybody says, well, they're gonna buy drugs, they're gonna just go buy alcohol. It has nothing to do with that person that is getting the money. That it has to do with you and what you're giving.
So awesome that you brought that up, because that night that we were at the Mongolian barbecue back in I think it was 95, we encountered a homeless person and you gave him money. And I was one of those people that went, oh, he's just going to go buy alcohol with it. And you said, good, I hope he has a good time. It's not about him. And it was a great learning lesson for me as well. I really love that you say those things, Father. Now, what about saints that you turn to in prayer that you ask for intercessions from?
It's really funny. When I was in the seminary and very young and impressionable, Saint Photios became my, because I'm named Chris after Jesus, after Christ.
Right.
So I didn't have a patron saint. I have a big guy. So I adopted Saint Photius because he was the ultimate rebel. And that was my dream of being the ultimate rebel. And to this day, still, Saint Photios still is a major influence in my life. However, there are others. Saint Fanurios, I go to Rhodes almost every trip to Greece. Nectarios, I go to Aegina almost every trip to Greece. And there's a great movie out right now. You talked about movies, Man of God, about Nectarios, a masterpiece.
Yeah, wasn't it really good?
Because it's camera and face of the saint. The first couple scenes you say, well, let's see if this actor can really do it. I thought I would hate the movie. I said, yeah. I'd become a snob because of Bob Kranz. No, I'm kidding. So I thought for the first couple scenes, he'll never convince me that this is Nectarios. This is the saint. And after the third scene, I said, wow, he's got him.
Yeah,
that's what I would envision.
Yeah, the actor did a really good job with that. And then my last question is music. I'll ask you a question that I asked all the people I interviewed to be on staff for Ionian Village this year. You're on a deserted island. you can only take the catalog of one musician or band or artist to listen to for the rest of your life, but the entire catalog, everything that they've ever made, and you're going to listen to that forever and ever while you're on this deserted island. Who is that person? Who is that band?
It's probably Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young.
Okay.
But I love Broadway. I've always followed, and I go to New York. I'm going in May again, every season for the new shows. So if I had to have a catalog, it would be Broadway music, would be over everything.
That's really cool. And that's where you saw Evan Hansen the first time. You saw the Broadway show.
Yes.
Huge differences between the movie and the live production?
No. And the critics hated it before it was even released because the star of the original star of the Broadway show was the star of the movie, and he's older now in his 30s. And how could he play a 17-year-old? And he did a good job, a very good job. After the first couple of scenes, I was convinced. And Ben Platt is his name, the actor, and he was superb. It's a very intense movie. I mean, I would like. I even suggest it being used in parental seminars, but teenagers were, also, because it's about them and it's about the way they react to each other. And my whole philosophy is that if you don't find Christ in the eyes of your brothers and sisters, you're never going to find him anywhere. Wow. You can read as many books as you want. It doesn't really matter unless you find him in your brothers and sisters.
Father, when we started this conversation, just before we started recording, you said 55 minutes. How are we going to do it? We've gone for 50. We've gone for 57, and I think that I could stay here all day with you and talk.
Thanks.
I'm going to give you the last word, though. Please, last word. Go for it. I want to thank you for everything that you've done for me and for the people around me, and I've inherited the nickname FG because of the FC that you got from yours as well. So every time somebody says that they see a field goal kicked during a football game, they think of me because it says FG there. But I want to thank you for everything. I love you to death. I know that we talk often by text. We need to increase this. I would love to do a show on your book, Parent Points. That would be a great topic as well. So we'll schedule that. But I'm going to give you the last few minutes to do with whatever you want. All you.
Yeah, I thank you, Father Gary, for this opportunity, and I thank you for being my great friend. I mean, all of us have great issues that we deal with, great moments in our lives, and we also have difficult moments, and there have been difficult moments in my life. And a couple of times when you didn't even know it, you were there for me, even just to discuss, minor things, even for you to rail about my Blackhawks beating the Kings, and the Cubs beating the Dodgers. Although you were the first one I called when the Dodgers won.
You were.
So anyway, I thank you for everything you're doing, because you know what, if I was to look at you like I tell Father Michalopoulos and a number of other priests like Father Sarolas, who you probably know, I think if I was to call you a student of mine, the student has far surpassed the teacher, without question, Father Gary. And I think your ministry is incredible. Keep giving. I know sometimes you turn to your wife or your children and you go, I've neglected you. I've not been there as much as I should because of my ministry, but keep giving and keep loving, because there's nothing better. And what you have ahead of you at Ionian Village is going to be a profound statement in your life and in your ministry and in your history. And one day you'll look back and you'll say, wow, I didn't even think it would be anywhere near this. Because I know it's a lot of work, but you'll get over the work. You'll get over those humps, believe me, and produce great things. Because I've seen you do it already.
Thank you, Father. I appreciate that. God bless you. Ladies and gentlemen, the Father Chris Kerhulas, Father C.
hardly be.
Appreciate it. God bless you, man.
Thank you,
It's
Father
awesome.
Gary.
It's awesome.
Thank
Want to thank you again for being a guest, and just the kind words that you said, and then just speaking from the heart and touching my heart again. So thank you. God bless you. Have a great afternoon, a great day, and enjoy Greece this summer. I guess you're going again, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Enjoy it.
Kalo Pascha.
Thank you. You too.